On behalf of the panel, I would like to thank Dr. Anurag Batra, Ashima, Garima, and the entire Business World legal team for giving us the opportunity of being part of such a prestigious and distinguished platform. I think there is still so much to be done to achieve, genuine equality in the profession. But I think we've made great progress so far. I think the very fact that we are sitting here and we are part of such a dynamic team of women leaders only cements that. To kickstart the panel discussion on the topic, which is notional income for homemakers, I would like to quote that, a woman's best protection is a little bit of money of her own. There is nothing more liberating than having the financial independence to make your own decisions and having, the ability to make your own investments. I've been financially independent ever since I started law school. I started working very early in law school. And there was an episode which happened, I'm a mother of 2 children now. And when I had my second child, somebody I knew in the profession for over, 15 years told me that now you've had your second child and I think it's time you stay home and look after the children, you won't be able to manage. And that's when I said, okay, that made me even more resilient and determined to say, I will manage, I will multitask, and I am going to make this work. I think as women, we have the ability to make things work. So I decided that I am not going to stay home. But there are so many women out there who either stay home by choice or they don't have a choice, so they have to stay home. I think the Supreme Court has been extremely forthcoming recently with its ruling on fixing notional income for homemakers. I think this is a great step towards social equality. I think the notion that homemakers no longer contribute, any sort of economic value to the household or, to the family no longer stands. Having said this, I would like to open, the topic for discussion to our esteemed panel. And, maybe, Minnie, would you like to share your thoughts on this?
Sure, Kanika. Kanika, I absolutely agree with everything you have said, that financial independence is the first step towards giving respect and dignity to women. Because the thing that I find that is missing the most in, with respect to homemakers is respect and, kind of recognizing the labor. So, homemakers, I've seen my own mother do it. I have seen other members of the family do it. It is not an easy job. It is a full-time job in every sense of the word. It is a job that requires you on your feet first thing in the morning until last thing in the night. And the one thing that I always say is that, your dads will retire, but your moms never retire. So, household work, it's never over. You don't retire from household work. So I think most of us, whoever, has women in the family who are working as homemakers, we would have experienced that they have no retirement age. They work around the clock. And the worst thing is that there is no appreciation in many cases. There is no respect for the work that they're doing. And this is something which is very common, I think, in not just in India. It happens in other countries as well. Just because we assume that Western countries could be a little more developed and their mindset could be a little different, but it may not necessarily be true, because if you communicate with women across borders, across jurisdictions, you find that everywhere, wherever women are working as homemakers, they have to hear this line often that you don't do any work, you don't earn anything. So that lack of respect is something which is common pretty much everywhere. So wherever a woman, for whatever, it's a very personal choice. If a woman has children and she wants to stay home, or it's a very personal choice. But the fact that it is not visible to people, that this is a 24/7 job, this is a job that requires a lot of hard work. And see, for professional women, when you work and you get rewards for that, right? You get an appraisal, you get a bonus, you get a promotion. It's very different. But doing that kind of hard work without any kind of appreciation, I think that is a whole new level, because that requires a lot of inner strength to have that kind of strength to that I'm going to do this for my family, and I don't care about the recognition, I don't care about the rewards. So I think it is very, very important to recognize this. It is very important to see the number is not important, but the fact that we are talking about it, the fact that this discussion has opened up on the notional income of women who are working at home, I think it is a step in the right direction, because I think it will help change the mindset of people that this is no work at all. And I think it very often children also don't respect their mothers. So that is a very unfortunate thing, that okay, you may say that you can understand that a husband does not respect his wife, but as children, your mother is dedicating her life to you, and when children don't respect their mothers, that is something which is very unfortunate, because they see that she is not getting up the first thing in the morning and going out of the house. So the whole understanding that the person who's leaving the house is working and the person who's staying at home is not working, this whole understanding needs to change. With the pandemic, most people were working from home, so that does not mean that they were not working, right? So the whole understanding, the whole mindset shift is required. I think we have come a long way, but we still need to go very, very far. So I think that can only happen when women also support each other, and of course kind of sends out the right message. So I'll hand it over to you.
I totally agree with that, Minnie. And I think, being a working mother with 2 children, I think the decision whether to stay home and, be with the children or go to work, either ways, when you're at work, you're thinking of the children. When you're, with the kids, you're thinking of work. So I think it's a difficult situation for both. But, for colleagues who have decided to stay back with their children at home, I mean, they've given up flourishing careers. They've worked very hard, to where they've come. So I definitely feel like more respect needs to be given to them. But having said that, I would love to hear from Nidhi, what are her views, because she could give us a perspective from, how the courts are viewing this now.
Thank you, Kanika. I believe, so the recent judgment that you spoke about, that is Justice Ramanna, who's written about notional income from the point of view of a death of a person. It's a motor vehicle tribunal claim, and he says that if a woman who was a homemaker and she's passed away, then when you calculate compensation, there has to be a notional income, and that law has been the law of the nation for very long. It is not only Justice Ramanna's recent judgment, but even that judgment cites judgments of 2001, etc., where this has been the law. But I look at the topic a little differently. I think to look at notional income when the woman has passed away for calculating compensation may not be enough. And considering our social fabric, where we have I do not know about all of you, but I have always seen my mother as a homemaker, and she's fully educated, qualified. She was working before she got married, but she decided to bring up her children, to take care of her family. And I would say that in such a scenario, the law does not protect the women, in the sense that we don't have the concept of the partnership method, wherein the partner's properties are viewed as a community asset, as an asset which the woman and the man hold together. And maybe if the law was to develop in that way, and something could be done in that aspect, that is really when we will recognize notional income. We have recognized it post her demise, but that may not be good enough. She needs that during her lifetime. And I believe these issues come regularly to courts when divorces are filed, and in those situations where the woman has not earned for many years, and having not earned for many years, now she is expected to earn. Of course, Justice Indu Malhotra also in Rajneesh versus Neha, she says that the court should keep in mind that it will be very difficult for an educated lady to earn, because she has been out of action. She may need more training. It is competitive as such to earn. But having said that, I believe there should be something to do with immovable property also, to say that assets that the husband may have purchased during the matrimony may be treated as common assets of the family, and a woman may be given, as of now we know under the Domestic Violence Act, the woman has been given a right to reside, but a right in ownership is what needs to be recognized if we actually want to say that there is a notional income and she was contributing to the income. That is mine. Yeah, I'll give it back to you to take it forward.
Thanks, Nidhi. I think that's a very interesting angle. I think, Manisha, would you have any views on this?
Kanika, I'm just building up on what Nidhi and Vinny have already added. I believe that the concept of notional income is not just important from a court's perspective, but it's also very important to know what is the contribution of women to our GDP, to the gross domestic product. It's also very important for us to know how our economics or the ecosystem is working, to know how to progress, what changes to bring in, and what social structures to probably challenge or to maintain, and see how we can take forward the society as a whole as well. Yes, the legal part of it is very important because, like Nidhi has touched upon, a very sensitive issue as to how do you expect a woman who has been a homemaker for the last 30-40 years during a divorce to start suddenly working and then maintain that lifestyle. And you hear this from the other side of the other side of the spectrum, from the men, or you hear it from them and they say that, well, I work and what has she done for me? I mean, the idea is she has done everything for you. I mean, the fact that you are today a successful man has everything to do with the fact that the woman behind you took that decision not to take her career forward, to raise your children, to pay your utilities behind your back. And I don't even agree to the partnership. I think it's 100% income should be contributed to the women behind such men who have been pushing them forward. I mean, if you look at it, and I say this with the utmost respect to most men who are brilliant at what they do. This is one thing, but my father also says that had it not been for my mother, who's a homemaker, and like Minnie rightly said, she's highly educated. My mother is highly educated as well, but took a decision to raise the children. Had my mother not supported the way she did to my father, he might not be where he is today in his life, at the position he is. And he always says that everything is hers. I have just worked and reached where I have. And what is that if not notional income? And that's why I say that 100% of it should go to women who are sitting at home working day and night. Like, there is no limit to it. I mean, I have to clean my room one day in the week and I know how much time it takes. All right. So I think we can all agree and say that all of us, women and men, would agree that the notional income has to be calculated, and calculated the judgments say conservatively and not too frivolously, but I think it has to be something above and beyond what it is presently, and it has to be recognized because it helps us as a society to also determine what the women of this country have been doing for us.
Thanks, Manisha. I think that's extremely interesting, and I think there's a lot for us to, think over these, suggestions which have been made. I think, as you said, like the way your mother supported, your father, I think even for us as working women, because we've had that parental support, and maybe we've had mothers who stayed home and looked after us and enabled us to study so far and, work so hard. It's also helped us in our professional journey, But I think also what would be really interesting is to have your thoughts on, the mindset changes India actually needs now, We've definitely come a far way, with, like in the UK, it was only in 1919, which is just, about 100 years ago, where women started practicing law because they weren't considered people before that. They weren't in the definition of people. So I think while we've come a far way with, maternity benefit and POSH and, paternity and flexibility, there's still so much that needs to be done for us. Because even with maternity and, making the leave 26 weeks now, for smaller businesses, it's very difficult to sustain because it becomes very onerous for them. So they kind of tend not to, hire women who are in that reproductive age, because 26 weeks of paid leave is not easy for a lot of businesses. Similarly, for paternity leave, India still doesn't have a formal policy. And while you look at the UK, you look at the US, Australia, Singapore, everyone has minimum paternity leave which you can take. And as far as flexibility at work is concerned, also again as a working mother, I think it's looked upon very negatively in India. Because you definitely need flexibility at work. In the UK, you can have people working 2 or 3 days a week, or you just work half day and it's extremely normal. But here, like if you need to leave office early, or you've got a 9 to 1 on your signature, it's really looked down upon. I mean, so I'd be really happy to hear your views on this as well. I think, Minnie, would you like to step in here?
Sure. So, yeah, absolutely. I'm in complete agreement again with whatever you've said. I think the mindset change that is required is huge. So, just to narrate a small incident. So, we have a domestic help who comes for 12 hours a day. So, one day, she got a little late. So, my mother was just talking with her, what happened and is everything okay at home? So, then she explained, how once she goes home after working for 12 hours at say 9:30 or 10 p.m., her husband and her son were waiting for her to cook the food. And although her husband works, say, 3-4 hours a day, and that too very sporadically, his work is more of a seasonal nature, so he probably works half the year. But the husband and son were waiting and saying that, this is your job. So the fact is that whatever she earns, belongs to the family. Then it is, so her income is everyone's income. But when she is working, when she is slogging off 12 hours a day, and when she's coming home, she doesn't even have that minimum support, because it is said that cooking is your job, cleaning the house is your job. So imagine her condition where she has to go home and she has to do all of that all over again for her family. So this is the mindset change. And the sad thing is that, one would normally think that if a person is earning money, that should bring respect, right? But sometimes the hypocrisy or the bias is so deep rooted that even in other classes of society, we find that even though women who are earning as well, they they are still expected to do other things. The expectation is that the women are going to look after the house, the women are going to look after the kids. So whether they are working or they are not working, sometimes it doesn't have a bearing at all, because it is assumed that, okay, your responsibility is double. You have to do this and that. So for women, it is often an A plus B kind of a scenario and not an A or B scenario. Whereas for men, it is they are generally given the choice that you can either do this or that. And in fact, in India, we don't even have the concept of house husbands. We don't. I don't think our society would permit that or recognize that anytime soon. So even in the West, it is not so prevalent, and even in the developed countries, it is not so prevalent. And especially in South Asian countries, for instance, the other day I was reading that Japan is very similar to India. And during the pandemic, there are many husbands who, for the first time, helped their wives because they had to stay at home. And that is also true. That also happened in India as well, that there were many men who actually for the first time probably made a cup of tea or probably had to cook a meal. So I think the schooling, the education of men is, I think, in some ways it is not flawed, it is incomplete, because only taught half the things. They are I think maybe not for us, but for my mother, when she was young, she was taught certain things, that you have to go and look after somebody's house, so you should know sewing, you should know cooking. So why are men also being taught these things? Why is it? Because this is not a male or female job, this is a life skill. Cooking, knowing if your button is broken, then being able to sew it, it's a life skill. It's not a gender defined job. So why not teach these things to men? Because again, you have women are studying home science and men are studying they have a physical training class, they have PT. So why from the very beginning, the education system, the learning is completely incomplete. It's not sufficient. It's not sufficient as far as men are concerned. And they also see their fathers are perpetuating the same kind of thinking. They see their teachers teaching them the same things. And I think that's how they also and especially men of our generation, they want to help, but sometimes they just don't know how, because they're like, we haven't been taught how to do this. So that is why I think for instance, I think the work from home is a great opportunity for men also to learn that there are so many things that are required to be done to keep the house in a working order, and to understand and appreciate the responsibility. I think with the equal, if in a couple people, both everybody, both men and women, they are working outside, they're both professionally engaged, then they should also be, and why just if the wife is working, even if the wife is a housewife, I think the husband really needs to help out the husband, because as we all know, you can, with your office work, there are times when you can switch off. You come back home maybe at 8 p.m, maybe at 9 p.m, but there will be a time when you will switch off. But for your wife, that option may not be there. She might be working round the clock. Today's children have exams, tomorrow somebody is sick, day after tomorrow there is a relative for whose party some arrangement has to be made. And the very fact that this is not considered as labor, that this is not considered as work itself, is very unfortunate. And especially now, we are in 2021 now, and if not now, then when? Because it's been a long time that women have been carrying this baton, carrying this complete responsibility of household chores, and all the changes are being made. I think they're still too few and too sporadic. So that change really needs to come soon.
Thanks, Minnie. Manisha, would you like to share your thoughts?
Yeah, Kanika, I think I agree with everything that Minnie has said, and she's put it very vociferously as well. I do agree with her when I say that education is very important. And by education, we obviously do not mean literacy. It has to be taught to the men and to the women as well, because there are many women who think that their only purpose in life is to get married, have kids, and take care of that family. The mindset of the society as a whole needs to change, that we are all here as contributing members of the family first, and then as a society as a whole. We are not simply here to see what gender has to do what. We need to understand and teach every child from today that if you're going to learn sewing, it has to be learned by everyone. If it has to be carpentry, it has to be learned by everyone. Physical training is important for both boys and girls, and anybody on the spectrum of however they define themselves. Again, the fact that the genders have to have a role and to be defined is also something that we need to change along with that, and also recognize people who do not fall into those two genders or do not recognize themselves as to those two genders. It's very easy as a cis heterosexual woman to say that I want to do this, but what about people who don't recognize themselves as women or men, or people who think that they are women inside but look like men? What are those roles to them? How can you define the society to do certain things in a certain manner? It's not about causing disruption onto the social fabric. The idea is to teach and eventually start changing, but that change ought to come. That we cannot be stagnant and say, okay, maybe in another 10 years, another 20 years. No, we start today and see where it takes us in the next 10 years. Apart from that, what is very important is for women not to even feel bad about the fact that they're homemakers. We're talking about women who go to work and feel bad that they're not able to take care of the family. But I have friends who had to give up their career and they feel ashamed to say that they're homemakers. And why is that? Because the society makes them feel that they are not contributing members of the society economically. Women who are giving up their life, body, work, financial independence to sustain their children and their husband and maybe their in-laws and their own parents, maybe great-grandparents, it could be an endless number of people dependent on that woman, is made to feel inferior to the other women who are working in other professions because she is a homemaker. Being a homemaker is considered as if you're uneducated, you're not good enough, you're not good, and that is very unfair. I mean, if she's taking a decision to be at home, to do what it requires to be done at home, believe me not, I will never want to be that, because I know how much work it takes and how much sacrifice it takes of one's personal agency to become a homemaker, and to demean those women. And this comes unfortunately from other women as well. Other women telling other women that you are not good enough. First, we need to have some unity amongst ourselves to then go fight our battles. There are times when people write, makeup, skirts, that's not me, I'm simple. How does it matter? Makeup or no makeup, skirts or sari, we are all women. Nothing makes you better than me, nothing makes me worse than you. And that is also the society change that we need to first bring into women's mindset. My nanny doesn't say anything to me, but had she been a very typical grandparent, she might have wanted me to be married and have like 20 kids and, have like move on with life, have not go to work. Why do you work till 4 a.m. in the morning? All those questions would arise not from maybe my grandfather, but probably from my grandmother, though I've been lucky that ways. But it could be that women in the household themselves first need to change. I mean, if you see all these serials on TV, and I don't, but I can hear them sometimes over things, the kind of in perpetuity they tell you the same stereotypes over and over and over again. You and I are educated, but what about those people who take that as real life? For them, that is society, and that is what they are living up to. So as women ourselves, as women lawyers, as women directors, as women producers of movies, as actresses, as models, as leading companies, we all have a duty to show what the gender needs to do first amongst ourselves, and not judge our own selves and create barriers for our own gender to go forward, and then maybe fight the battle of how you will bring yourself into the society as a whole.
Thanks, Manisha. I totally agree that women need to uplift women. I think, we all understand what we go through both at home and in the profession as well. And having said that, I think it's very important for mindset changes to take place at work as well. It's not only at home. So Nidhi, it would be great to have your thoughts on what changes you feel, need to happen at work.
Yeah, at work, I think as women, we need to employ more women. I have not seen many women clerks. I have not seen many women peons in offices. And as a society which does not want to define gender roles, then we must also, as people recruiting people, appreciate that if a woman goes and works as a household help, her salary or her income will be much less than if she was given the job of a peon in an office. So these kind of if we also change our mindset, it will really help uplift a lot of women. Certainly, if there are any people, any non-lawyers, clients watching, I would advise. I meet a lot of women who say that they would not like to work because they would want to rely on maintenance from the husband. I believe as a society we need to also not think like that. We need to not think of the husband as a earning arm and the woman as a non-earning arm. So if you can earn, please earn, and whatever you are entitled in law, you will get. I think we also see a lot of cases where the brothers, they have an inherent belief that the sister is not to get anything from the father's property. The laws are now treating us as equal. We have an equal right in co-parcenary properties. The mindset of the men in the society as equally of women, because there are matters and matters where there is a big family of say 7-8 siblings, and only one daughter saying that partition it 7 ways, and everyone else saying no, it should go to the one brother, etc. So as a society, the mindset needs to change. People need to realize that women have equal rights, and that is all. I think maybe we will see better times. Even in fact, when I was preparing for this discussion, I was going through the Hindu Succession Act to see how how one-sided. If you look at how the succession works for a Hindu male, it goes in a linear manner. But for a Hindu female, it is if I get a property from my father, then it will go to my father's heirs. If I get a property from my husband or my father-in-law, then it will go to their heirs. I mean, the law is presuming that there are properties that I'm getting from, my paternal and maternal side, and it may not be mine. So why should I not have a simple schedule like the man has? So of course, when the society will progress, the laws will also progress together, and certainly as that famous song from that Star Is Born, maybe it's time to let the old ways die. I'll give it back to you.
Thanks, Nidhi. I think, it's very important for us to, try and spread awareness. It's important to sensitize, and people need to be more mindful. I think as far as work and, having diversity and more parity at work is concerned, I think we need more, parity in leadership. And we need to use our gender intelligence, because I think there's certain things women do which, could be far more successful than the way men deal with it, So as being part of a law firm, I think I would want to ask Minnie, what kind of policies do you follow as, to promote women, to promote diversity, parity, inclusion?
So I have always been on the fence on whether reservation is effective or it is not effective, because there are arguments both for and against. So the idea is that if you really consider yourself equal, then why do you need some policy to say that 50% women will be hired, or we will only choose candidates, our candidate pool will be accordingly selected. So although I've been on the fence over this, but I do feel that change is required, change is going to happen, but in the interim period you do need something which is stronger. So that is why I think finally we have taken a policy as a firm to have reservation for women for up to 50%, and we do while interviewing candidates. That is a very important criteria. And luckily, I think at least in the legal profession, what I have seen is that there are a number of women who are there are many women lawyers. There are many advocates who are practicing corporate law. But the only problem is that I think there are compared to the numbers which actually start in the profession and compared to the numbers who are at the top, there is a huge mismatch. So this panel is great. Thank you to Business World for helping us realize there are so many accomplished women in the legal industry, and there are many others also who are not there on the panel, but who are also there are many accomplished women. But at the same time, I think there are many women who miss out somewhere on the way, because women drop off the career trajectory somewhere on the middle. And you need to have policies. You need to have most companies need to have those kind of flexible policies, those kind of incentives, those kind of benefits that can actually give women an opportunity to come up, because the reasons are various. I mean, sometimes, I think all of us have experienced the old boys club, whether it's in a company or whether it's in a law firm, where, the understanding is always that the big decisions are going to be taken by the big boys. And, as a woman, you're always, for a minute, you are always looked at as somebody who has just, when you walk into a room for a minute, especially for me, I've faced that in a lot of companies where majority of the decision makers used to be men. And it's like you walk into a conference room, you see like there are 15, 16 men and you're the only woman, and you can't help notice such things, because if the numbers were more, you wouldn't notice it. But when you actually see that when it comes to decision making, the women they don't reach the top, or they don't even reach mid levels in a lot of cases. So the analysis of this, that to why this is happening, if reservation can help, then that's great. But it is not just as far as recruitment is concerned. It through the entire life cycle of an employee's career, we have to give them those kind of benefits and incentives, and that kind of flexibility. That so as a firm, we do believe that we do work from home policies are there, maternity benefit policies are there, and I think women work both ways. Sometimes as a woman you can be very sensitive to the needs of other women, or sometimes they just we've all heard even women say, "Oh gosh, you have a female boss, God bless you." So it is very unfortunate that sometimes women also can be very they can be very extreme. So that kind of mindset also needs to change, that having a female boss is not a life imprisonment. You're not going to it doesn't mean that you're going to be harassed. And again, there are stereotypes there also. If somebody is not married, then they say, "Oh, she's finicky because she's not married." For all you know, if you don't have kids, they'll say she's insensitive because she doesn't have kids. So as a woman, sometimes no matter what you do, you can't do it right. But I still think that you should still go ahead and do what you want to do, and follow your dreams, basically.
Thanks, Minnie. I think I completely agree with you. And I think as far as, policies within the firm are concerned, it's also to do with not only, recruitment. It's also, remuneration, the appraisals. I think it's also to do with the benefits that you give the employees. So it's a whole lot. Like for me, I've never really viewed myself as a female in this profession. I've always looked at myself as a lawyer who's doing her job and who's worked really hard to succeed. And I honestly believe that if you just continue to work hard, you have your head on your shoulders, you will do well, whether it's male or female. So a lot of the gender bias is self-created in the mind. And I think a lot of women need to change that within themselves as well. I think, Manisha, it'll be great to have your views for your firm as well.
Thanks, Kanika. Minnie's just amazing at what she says. And she usually says everything what I would like to say. So I'm just going to keep adding on to what she's saying. As a firm, we do have an inclusion policy, and of course it's similar to what Minnie is saying, that we try to hire as many women and have a 50-50 balance at an associate level. Unfortunately, at the partners level, we haven't been able to achieve that yet. But yes, that always is the aim the epitome we want to reach, to have a equally balanced firm throughout. However, there are certain positions in the firm which are handled by women only, and that is the chair of the managing partner and the chair of the accountant. And I think that is the two of the most important chairs in a law firm scenario, and both are handled by women in our firm. And I think I've never been more happy about it, because it just that balance and that management and that sensitivity, irrespective of kids or no kids, but which women bring to the firm scenario, to the management of a firm, is something unparalleled. And men might not agree to it, but that's how I see it. We went one step ahead with our inclusion policy from this year onwards, and we now have March, which is when Women's Day is celebrated. We only hire women interns for this month. And adding to that, we also have done, as for the Pride Month, which is June, we will be giving preference to people who recognize themselves as part of the LGBTQAI plus community. And then taking it forward, in December, it's for people with disabilities will be given preference. And in August, we'll be giving preference to children of the martyred in the Indian Armed Forces, or children whose parents are agriculturists, farmers, or who are still in active duty with the Indian Armed Forces. So those are the people we might be giving preference to, and this just started this year, so that's something that I want to put out there. Now coming to the legal profession, unfortunately, we are still not where we ought to be, but it is a profession where there is, I believe, more respect to women than in other professions. Why I say that is that women lawyers are, like Kanika, you rightly said, they're not considered as women lawyers. They are considered as just lawyers. There are biases which you might face from clients as to what they perceive you as, but as colleagues in the profession, I haven't really faced too many times where a man or my men partner would treat me any different. Sometimes I think they go beyond that, and then I have to stop them and go there are women in the room, so calm down. So that might just happen, but on the highest level, which I see as judges and senior advocates, at least on the litigation side, we are very far behind when it comes to women. We do not have enough women judges, and only 17% of the senior advocates are women. And only this year, I think it's 17 women out of 420 women in the Supreme Court who are senior advocates. And it might be different in every high court who appoint senior advocates. And that's something that we really need to change. Why are women not given the recognition on the litigation side of it? On the law firm side of it, I do believe that yes, there are partners in the tier 1, at least it's about 35 to 40% to even 45% female partners. In mid-tier and in third-tier law firms, it's about 25-30%. But I think that all because is a difference between the litigation and the corporate side of it. A lot of women, because of the societal pressure, also choose to go in-house, because they believe that might be a more job for them to handle along with being homemakers. And that's what we are saying, that we expect women not to choose between A and B. It's A plus B plus C plus whatever, and it's never ending. So those are the changes that I would like to see, at least in the legal profession, have more women in litigation reach the highest. And let's have our first woman Chief Justice soon. I mean, instead of it's already been 75 years, 75 years, we need more. It's about time. We need to have that woman chief justice. We can't wait any longer for that. Apart from that, on the company side of it, that one board seat for a woman director in a listed entity or in a public entity over certain criteria, that also needs to change. We don't need that one person just sitting there because the government says so. The mindset of the people needs to change to put more women on the board, and they will see that the kind of diversity and inclusion women bring onto the board is going to be far different. And the perspective they bring on how to run a business, and be it any business, they will definitely have a different mindset than men. And women do not have a very, they ought to, but they don't have a very aggressive demeanor about everything. They might be more pragmatic about how they're approaching certain things, and sometimes deals break.
Thank you, Shrisha. Good evening, or very good evening, everyone.
Somebody's trying. That's all right. So yeah, so women, so what I was saying is that women would bring different perspectives to the board, and that's where I also would like to see those changes as in the business scenario. So yeah, that's about from me.
Nidhi, was there anything would you like to say? I think we'll just have just a few minutes left.
I think we've covered everything. I just hope we see better times and more equal times.
So thank you. I would like to thank Business World, and I think it's most important to thank the women that came before us in the profession and who stand with us in the profession, to give us this opportunity of being here today. I think it's been really wonderful to be part of this panel with, Minnie, Nidhi, and Manisha. And thank you, Business World.